Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Jessica Mazia and I work at the Career Development Center at Purchase College. I'm joined here by Wendy Morisoff, who is the director, and Jeffrey Arroyo, who's our internship coordinator, career counselor. So hello to everyone. We're so happy that you can attend today to learn more about opportunities and trends in healthcare. So I'm just going to get started, and I want to introduce Jonathan Tamir. He is the CEO of New Jersey Brain and Spine, and he is actually kind of going to get started and then introduce some more of our panelists. So Jonathan, if you could kind of start off the discussion about just an introduction to the current career and hiring trends that you're seeing in healthcare.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. What I was thinking to do is give a really short start and then introduce you to the panelists. So healthcare, as you probably know, is an entirely global environment, and there are people that are international doing healthcare here and people here doing healthcare internationally, and there are so many different types of activities within healthcare. It's a microcosm essentially of all industry, with finance, HR, operations, IT, you name it, there's something to be done. So I have been in healthcare essentially since the beginning of my career, with the exception of 2 years on Wall Street. I like it. I think there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction to be had in helping people. And that, coupled with the amazing diversity of career paths, is kind of what we wanted to highlight for you today. And then after we're done with introductions, I'll ask a question, and then after that, we'd be happy to entertain your questions. So let me introduce you quickly to our panelists today. And again, they all essentially started with me at Columbia. Other than Chris, who's got more stamina than all of us, we are all somewhere else. Chris is still at Columbia. But I will introduce them very quickly. Nina, who's we'll talk to you first, is essentially working now with hospice and palliative care, which is kind of her third focus, I think, in healthcare, and she'll tell you about that. Erin is a manager in revenue cycle at Mount Sinai. Erin's a practice manager at the Hospital for Special Surgery. And Chris, as I mentioned before, is still in finance, doing great stuff at Columbia University Medical School. So they'll each give you a very short how I got here, and then we'll start them off with a question. Nina.
Okay. Hi all, my name is Nina, and I'm currently the Director of Business Operations here at Seasons Hospice and Palliative Care. And I got my start in healthcare. I was an administrative fellow with Jonathan, and Jonathan was my mentor. And so I was an administrative fellow in the Department of Medicine. So it was a large department, the largest in the academic medical center. And so was able to do, a really good rotation through my year that I was there. And so was able to get a really good understanding of how the department operated, and how it supported research, HR, operations, to name just a few. I had then moved on to pediatrics, worked as a project manager, and there I learned to build relationships while as a new hire, and how to navigate new relationships, and also take initiative, hunt out different projects that I really wanted to work on, and took initiative to take on different types of training, even though it wasn't really relevant to my job, because I felt that in the end it was going to benefit me regardless of whether I am going to use it now or later. And so that had that has served me really, really well in terms of the mentality that I had. Then I had moved on to practice management. I really loved operations. So when the opportunity came up, I moved into a practice manager role, and rheumatology was there for 3 years. And so that was also the first time that I had started managing people. So it was really challenging. And I think Jonathan remembers this too, because I was having a life crisis. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I did the wrong thing. I shouldn't be in this field. I need to be somewhere else. I can't do this. But persevered, got through it. And coming out on this other side, I have to say I'm really, really proud of myself. Thank you, Jonathan, for all those sessions when I was just freaking out. And yeah, it's difficult, but it's worth it. So then after having been at Columbia for 5 years, I was just like, okay, now I really need a time for some change, because all my experience has been in an academic medical setting. And so I was just like, okay, next step, probably I want to do something in private practice, especially if I really enjoy operations. So moved to the West Coast and worked for fertility. Really, really busy, extremely fast paced, completely different from working at Columbia. And so now currently in my new role, definitely seeing a lot of opportunity to basically apply everything that I've learned into this new role. So most likely I would say that 80% of it I know, and 20% of it I'm picking up and still learning.
Great. Erin?
Hey, so thanks, Jonathan. My name is Erin. My career started out a little differently. I started out as a music teacher. I taught middle school and elementary school for about 6 years. And then after realizing teaching wasn't exactly what I wanted to do career-wise, I went back to school for my master's in healthcare administration degree. I was lucky enough to land the same administrative fellowship that Nina did at Columbia with Jonathan. So that's where I learned all about, how an academic medical center functions. And that's where I also discovered my interest in revenue cycle. And after my fellowship was completed, after that year, I was offered a position as a senior data analyst in revenue cycle. I spent about 2.5 years in that position. And then I moved on to my current role now at NYU Langone Health as a revenue cycle manager for their faculty group practice, where now I oversee the revenue cycle operations for emergency medicine and anesthesia.
So Erin, can you also talk a little bit about when you were chosen to be an EPIC trainer?
Oh, yeah, sure. So towards my second year of my data analyst role, we decided Columbia was going, we were switching our EMR systems they had a much older system, IDX, and then we switched to Epic, which is more currently used amongst all the top organizations and institutions within the country. So we decided so Columbia was switching their systems, and they asked for some internal people within the organization to kind of teach, to help to learn about the program, the different aspects, whether it was running reports and data, or some of the different clients within the actual program itself within the software. And so I got to learn that, like, a very unique position. I got to learn all about how Epic functions. And then I was able to teach all of my peers, all of my, people superior to me, people in all different departments. So it was like a great opportunity just to kind of learn not only more about the software itself, but also learn more about how Columbia functions, and all about how all these departments, group together and work together to provide healthcare.
Great, thank you. Erin?
Hi, everyone. So I'm Aaron Heffley. I guess the beginning of my career path in healthcare started with a string of luck. So I was a junior going into senior year of undergraduate at Salisbury University. I was studying exercise science, sort of decided that I wasn't as into the clinical end of things. And so in a string of luck, my best friend from home, Michael, came up and said, hey, why don't you consider a master's in healthcare administration? I said, wow, that sounds interesting. Okay, I'll do it. So I did that program. Again, at the end of that, you essentially, a lot of people in that program, especially young professionals, apply for what's called an administrative fellowship. which myself, Aaron, Nina, all completed under Jonathan, and Chris was basically an adjunct fellow with us too in the finance department. And so we did that. After that was over, I worked as a program manager for hip and knee reconstruction in the Department of Orthopedics at Columbia, and then moved on to be a practice manager at Hospital for Special Surgery, where I'm now doing physician onboardings. I'm the head of the trauma service line, primary sports medicine, and a joint trauma subspecialty group called HSS at NYP.
Thank you. Chris?
So I had absolutely no intention of ever working in healthcare. I was playing poker at the time, and people that I played with were suggesting that.
Chris, you're kind of hard to hear. You're kind of muddy.
Oh no, is it
That's
better?
better. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, no intention of working in healthcare. Well, actually, yeah, I thought about becoming a physician assistant, but you know, I decided that I did not want to do clinical, so I'd written off healthcare. I've been playing poker for many years, and people that I played with were suggesting finance jobs. And I went to the Career Center at Purchase, and Wendy let me know that Jonathan was going to be giving a presentation on opportunities in healthcare. And you know, I heard healthcare, and you know, wasn't immediately interested. But then I saw that Jonathan was working in finance and healthcare, and I went to his presentation, and the rest is history. I've been you know, very fortunate to have met him. He's been a phenomenal mentor. The what we do here, we're in the central finance office for the Department of Medicine. We have to manage the budget, our own budget, and then also a budget with the hospital that provides funding for our doctors. So we have three missions because we're a med school. We have research, education, and clinical. And it's been a very very fascinating time here. I've been here for almost 4 years. A lot of what I do is creating new reports and like automating reports, so where I can dump data in it, and then it'll populate these sheets so we can track physician productivity. There's a lot of what we do. It's data heavy, and every day I'm working with Excel, but I'm loving it. I've learned so much here.
So let's also say just a kind of a sense of scale. Chris supports a department that has a budget over $500 million with a B dollars a year. So pretty major undertaking that Chris is kind of responsible for doing. So thanks, guys. I mean, that was helpful. So I just wanted to maybe give a quick my take on what's going on that I see right now in the hiring world. And then maybe we'll get to, well, we'll definitely get to the panelists and see what they're saying, since some of them have moved jobs relatively recently. And also, I think it's going to be important for you guys is that they can also tell you kind of what classes they took that really helped them kind of be able to focus, and what classes they took so they have the vocabulary to talk the language that recruiters are waiting to hear. I would say right now, I mean, we've heard a lot of crazy stuff going on in the employment landscape. I don't know if you saw, but it's people are quitting jobs if they can't stay remote. They said in August, 3% of the people that were employed quit their jobs. This is a time of a lot of turmoil. And I think that, again, we're looking to hire a couple of people. We've got a pretty steady group, which again, I think is up to management to make that steady by giving people what they need. But we do have a couple of positions we're hiring because people have moved out of the area. And I'll tell you, we're getting lots of resumes and relatively few quality resumes. So what I'd like to do again, it's turn to our panelists and ask them what classes they took that helped them give them the vocabulary to impress the recruiters, and also what they're seeing in their organization in terms of what people are looking for and what the candidate pool looks like. I'll go backwards this time. Chris, do you want to start?
Absolutely. So the most important class I took wasn't in college. It was an Excel course. When I learned that the positions I was interested in would be data heavy, I asked a friend of mine what I would need to know, and he said pivot tables and VLOOKUPs especially. So I found an online training site. I used GoSkills, but LinkedIn Learning is even better. I got through the courses with no problem. Nothing could prepare me though for I was using in the course data sets with maybe like 7 columns and a few thousand rows. And coming here, the data we use every day, it's I think 125 columns and hundreds of thousands of rows. So it gave me the building blocks, and I was able to hit the ground running. And what I really like about this job is that the basic formulas, then you can combine them, and that you have to come up with interesting solutions to make the data usable. I would not be able to do it without like having that backbone.
Aaron or anybody else want to jump in? Feel free.
Sure, I'll jump in. I'll piggyback off of Chris. So similar to him, like, Excel is very important, but I would say the most important class that I took was a data analytics course. Mine was focused in healthcare because of my program was healthcare specific. But that analytics course taught me how important data is in running any sort of practice. So no matter what industry you're going to be in, but it's incredible how much data that we collect in just everyday life. So, I mean, that class taught me the key metrics to look for, again, healthcare specific for me, but it also taught me how to look for and spot different trends within my practice. And it also taught me how to benchmark. So against other organizations, other institutions, but also against other industries as well. So it really helped me kind of hone my analytical skill, which I think has helped me in every job since.
And Aaron, what are you seeing in terms of your organization? Who are they looking for? Are they getting lots of applicants? How is that working?
Sure. So in my organization, since I'm focused mostly in revenue cycle, we're in a process of kind of restructuring our team, and the people that we're looking to hire are people that have that strong background, and they're able to they're comfortable in like Microsoft Office products, are comfortable in Microsoft Excel, and comfortable working with data, working with large data sets. So that's, I mean, we're looking for like more of those sorts of skills at the moment.
Great. Nina, Aaron?
To piggyback off on what Chris and Aaron were saying, yeah, I would say that data is extremely, extremely important. Being able to analyze the data that you're collecting, and then also being able to speak to it knowledgeably. So for instance, if you're seeing data that's a bit wonky or a bit off, being able to bridge that, your knowledge of maybe the practice that you're running against that data is extremely important, just because sometimes sometimes things are just unique, and it's actually not your business that's falling apart. It's just, something that had happened that month, or maybe there's some type of trend that is going on within the organization. So being able to connect data, and then also when you have data and you're analyzing these data, it's for a purpose, and that purpose is to actually hopefully be able to use it and improve the performance of the operation or the business. And so one part of that is being able to find opportunities or find key opportunities within your organization where you can actually go ahead and apply it, or have like real life applications, instead of simply just saying, oh, I ran these data and this is a number that's telling me the end. So I'm seeing a lot of that as well. And then in terms of hiring in the workforce, so my primary role has been to hire for support staff for practices. And so, for instance, I've had to hire front desk, had to hire clinical staff, so nurses, medical assistants. And so when I interview for those roles, I definitely look for individuals who are first will be good to our patients. So customer service is extremely important. Being able to relate to that individual, being able to see that that individual is friendly is extremely important. And then also I want to see the passion, like, why do you want to work for our organization? I like to see that you've done some research on the organization, and that there's some type of connection there, instead of it being, kind of, I can tell that when people are making it up on the spot where they're not really passionate about it, then I can also tell. And so that does kind of prevents really the individual from going ahead in the interview cycle, just because if you're not passionate about the role and I'm going to be spending all this time interviewing you and then having you interview with other individuals, this passion, or it's not going to carry you through. And so that's simply going to be a waste of your time and our time. And the thing is that I don't need you to memorize everything in the world. I just need you to be able to pick up some areas where it means, where the organization is really meaningful to you in terms of its work, in terms of something that you can resonate with. Then that is something that I look for. And then also I look for individuals who are, I think, willing to take accountability. I'll ask questions like, in the past, have you had any conflict with anyone? I'll ask, what type of roles have you been in? And so usually through these different types of interview questions, I'll be able to hear the personality of the individual behind the screen. And so if that individual is always like, oh yeah, this happened, and it's someone else's fault, or this is what I did, and I always reached out to my manager. I didn't do anything on my own. And I'm just like, okay, so I'm the manager here interviewing you, and you're telling me that for all of your problem solving, you went straight to your manager. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm also really, really busy, but if you're not able to handle anything on your own, this is going to be a second job for me. And I don't want individuals like that, right? I want to empower individuals. I want to work with individuals that want to learn. I want to be able to say, okay, when I leave this organization, I want to train someone who's going to be able to take over this role. I don't want to have to baby people and then have them come to me all the time for their work that they're actually supposed to be doing. So that has served me really, really well. And I've been able to work with individuals who are independent, who take initiative, who hold themselves accountable. And because of that, then I'm able to train them, be able to trust them with responsibility, and then be able to focus on other areas of my own role.
Thank you, Aaron.
So favorite class, I think I took a really good management course in undergrad. And what it sort of taught me is that it's the old saying, right? It's not necessarily about what you know, it's about who you know. And I think that that's a very valuable skill. So whenever you find yourself in the workforce, knowing who to reach out to for what, to Nina's point, you don't want to be over reliant on anybody, but knowing where to go for different sources of information and then knowing how to delegate from there, I think is extraordinarily valuable. As far as hiring trends go, I think I agree with what everybody said. I think everybody's had really valuable input. What Jonathan said earlier has definitely been hitting us as well, which, you know, we're not finding the best applicants across the board. We are finding good ones, but it used to be we would, you know, for an office manager position or a supervisor position, we would have 20 applicants and 8 or 9 would be good. You know, maybe they wouldn't be the best fit, but they would be good. Now we'll have 80 and 8 of them will be good. So it's gone down significantly in that sense. I think if I were in undergrad right now, what I would focus on the most is in the era of COVID, you have a ton of, Zoom, Microsoft Teams interviews. So how do you present yourself well during that? Are you looking into the camera, right? One really good tactic that I've had is I put notes up above the screen. So I'm actually not looking down, I'm looking up and at the screen. That's something that I think would be valuable. And then obviously, go to resume courses, make sure that looks nice. Generally speaking, at this point, I don't think it should be over a page long. You know, you should have a resume writer look at it. You should have multiple people look at it, but that'll help you kind of get your foot in the door, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right,
and I
please.
would, thanks, Jonathan. And I would say definitely practice for your interview, whether that is in front of the mirror, whether that is, reaching out to your mentor, reaching out to your friends, family, getting all of that jitteriness out of your system, because if you don't practice speaking it aloud and instead everything is going on in your head, when you actually speak to the interviewers, I think that's when all of the anxiety is going to come out. And then the other thing is that keep the interviewers focused, right? You don't want to be talking about yourself when someone asks you, hey, tell me about yourself, about your dog, about your family, about your kids, about, I don't know, about everything under the sun except for your graduates, your undergrad degree, and then why it pertains to the role. Yeah, so don't bring out, like how old you are and your mom and your dad, don't bring up any of that. The tell me part is basically how your background, educational background, maybe volunteering background, maybe some of the part-time internships that you've done is connected to this current role. And then also interviewers get bored too. They kind of conk out too, because they're busy, they're doing a job, they're trying to hire for someone for the role, they have emails that's coming in, they're distracted. And then when you come in with a 10-minute boring spiel that is not unique in any way because there's 100 other applicants right behind you, you want to stand out.
Great. So let me follow that up. I think Nina makes an excellent point, and that's one of the do's. I'll have one do for you and one don't for you. And these are killers. Let's start with the don't. Don't put your phone on vibrate. Turn your phone off, completely off. Because I've been in interviews where somebody's phone has rung and I've said, oh, why don't you get that? And they're like, no, that's okay. I said, no, that's okay. Why don't you step outside and get that? I'm sure that's important. Because you know what, if you've got something else that's more important than interviewing for that job, which is when you're really supposed to be on your best behavior, what are you going to be like when you're actually doing that job? So I will tell you that there are a couple of people who I've terminated interviews early because of that. It's actually even best if you don't have your phone with you. I tell people if you get a choice, leave your phone in the car. That way you won't even be tempted. Okay, I think that's important. The other thing that I think that Nina picked up on, which is very important, is this. At this point, we essentially expect you to be researching us. Okay, so I'm expecting to see that you checked me out on LinkedIn if you're coming for an interview. If you have not checked me out on LinkedIn, I don't think you've done your research. Okay. In addition to which, once you've seen something like that, what you need to do, very much to Nina's point, is find a point of commonality with your interviewer. I don't care if it's you work someplace, maybe you know the same people. I don't care if you both like fly fishing or something like that. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, it's might not be something I'm interested in, but I'm going to find something that is interesting, that is a commonality, that is a connection. And if you can find it outside of work, that's almost even better than something during work. And with everything going on, I'm not telling you to be a stalker. I'm not telling you to basically say, oh yeah, well, you know, I hear you have a 12-year-old kid and I stopped by their school. I mean, that's creepy, okay? But knowing that they have a hobby, knowing that they, you know, who knows what, right? They read a certain kind of genre. Maybe they have written a book. Maybe they have given a lecture about a topic that's not in their job title. Whatever, there's so much stuff out there. Find some commonality. And when they end, they're looking at the interview and they're saying, well, do you have any other questions? You know, you can then say, well, not really job related, but I did notice that you're interested in such and such. So am I. I'm wondering what's your favorite trip or book or record or whatever. And you know what? People like talking about themselves. And to Nina's point of there being 100 other people they're going to be talking to, they're going to remember the person that asked them about their personal interest much more than the person who has the perfect credentials, is dry and boring. Because the bottom line is, as Nina says, you're going to have to work with this person. So exactly what she said in terms of you don't want to be their problem solver. You would also like to have somebody you have a little bit of commonality with. You know, I don't know anything about fly fishing, but hey, if the two of you find that as a commonality, you can talk about the different flies that you bought or made or whatever. I mean, that at least for that boss that says, hey, you know what, this is somebody I can talk about my passion with. And that's going to very much be in the plus side for you. Any other suggestions, Aaron, or Chris? And then we can take questions.
I would say one of the most important qualifications you should really have. When I interview people, I just started this position a few months ago, but I had, due to COVID and, we were bringing people back into the office, and someone on my team quit because she wanted to work remote full time and we weren't able to offer that. So I've been recruiting for a biller position I have, my new guy starts next week. I'm very excited about it. But what really struck me, when I was very interested about him, was his attitude. So no matter what industry you're in, we can teach you those technical skills. You can learn Excel, you can take some courses, we can teach those technical and industry skills, but a willingness to learn is really important. So if you go in there, I'd rather take someone who's completely green and doesn't know anything about healthcare, anything about billing, anything about revenue cycle, but who wants to learn. I would rather that person be on my team any day than someone who's, who has all the skills, has a ton of experience, but is jaded and has a poor attitude about going into work every day. And you can really pick up on that in an interview. So what I really liked about this guy was he, I was telling him about some of my, it was the questions that he asked. So at the end, do you have any questions for your interviewer? He was asking, one of the questions he asked me was, how do you communicate to your staff? So how do you, if an organizational change happens, how do you communicate to your staff, those sorts of changes? And what do you do to keep your team organized? So in our interview, we were bouncing ideas off of each other, and he was getting visibly excited about coming in and helping me structure the team. And that's why I hired him, is because he really seemed interested and wanted to learn about what we do and contribute to our team. So it's all about that attitude.
Yeah, that's I'd say the same thing. when you're interviewing, you also want to know what the company is going to do for you, and the thirst for knowledge and the desire to learn. That is exactly who you want.
And I would say during an interview, don't be afraid to speak up and advocate for yourself, because that interview is actually your opportunity to do so. So be confident in that aspect and show the interviewer that you have what it takes, and then just hit them with everything that you feel is relevant to the role. And so for myself, as I've done interviews, one of the rules I've set for myself is that anytime I open my mouth during an interview, it better be about something that I've done for the organization. And it doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, and I did this and I did this. No, it could be very subtle, and it can always keep leading the conversation back to what you've accomplished. And for myself, that it's been very good, because I can see it from the interviewer and their expression that, oh, okay, they understand that, I'm advocating for myself. And then also they see that I understand the job role as well, and the responsibilities that's going to be coming with it. And so for interviewers, I think that they always want to know that, okay, when I hire this person, they're not going to be an extra burden on me. They're actually going to pull their own weight, and maybe they'll even pull some of my weight too. And so I do that. On the other end, also, you're interviewing the organization too. So I think that for some individuals, or at least when I was interviewing in the early parts of my career, I was just like, oh my gosh, I desperately need this job, and I am not going to rock the boat, and I'm not going to question anything because I need this job. It's not them that needs me. And so I've not, advocated for myself. I've not pushed certain questions through. And what ended up happening was that I learned that I made a mistake. So for instance, when I had moved over to work in fertility, I had just assumed that, work hours are 9 to 5. And silly me, why would I ask them the work hour? That's kind of petty. So coming here and working, I learned that the hours were from 6:30 until whenever they're going to let me go. And so there's a stop at 5, 6:30 to 5. That would have really made a huge impact on when I negotiated with them, if I had known that those were the hours that I was expected to work. And as a manager, also realized that there are hours that though we are told, hey, you're working 40-hour weeks, you're actually expected to work until the job is done. So that meant that, I was working some really, really, really crazy hours. And if I had stepped up and asked this one simple question, then maybe my expectation would have been very different. And my expectation and also my planning, all of that, my thoughts on the role would have also been very different. So don't be afraid to ask questions, because when someone asks questions, that's when also I know that, okay, that person at least is engaged, and that person is smart, and that person also has other opportunities. And so that person isn't going to be a yes, person. Instead, that person is going to be engaged. And I far more would prefer someone that's going to be engaged and is thinking by themselves, instead of me having to think up everything for them, because eventually these individuals will be working on projects, and those individuals will need to come up with unique ideas with solutions. And I don't want to be the person who's going to need to provide solutions either.
Great. Okay. Jessica, do you want to open it up to questions?
Yeah, so please, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me. So it seems like throughout all the different fields, there are certain personal qualities that you as hiring managers usually look for, despite the differences in the fields. Now, which qualities would you specifically stress of a individual that you think across the board can be applied to various positions? For example, Nina was talking, she stressed on independence of the individual and their ability to take on tasks and work on their own without having to always be supervised. And Aaron was stressing attitude and the motivation to learn on their own and come into work motivated. So what other qualities along these lines would you say do you look for besides the work oriented knowledge and the esoteric knowledge that comes with the job?
I think it's a really good question. I mean, I think to start, you look for somebody that, especially if they're going to be directly on the team that you're managing, you can work with on a day-to-day basis, right? So there's a personality aspect as well. You don't want to work with somebody who you think you're going to bring in and they're going to be miserable, they're moping around, they have a bad attitude. So to Nina's point, to Aaron's point, you want to work with somebody who has a good attitude, who has a positive outlook on the job, who's done their research, who knows who you are, who's trying to make those interpersonal connections. And that should be done, like what Jonathan was saying, before the hiring occurs, when you're going into the interview. And I also think that if you run into an interview where maybe there's not that much information out there, when you're actually interviewing for the position, you should be you should work on being able to communicate with someone and have an open conversation, rather than it feels like you're getting tested, right? Like, you want them to be loosen up in a way, and when you're interviewing, you want to share laughs, you want to ask them about what they like to do with their personal time as well. You want to try to grab onto things where you're making that personal connection. I think that's what it's really about, and that's what helps people get in. Because if you take all of the hard skills and you're even with somebody else across the board, let's say you're coming in, same GPA, same requisite skill set, same everything, but one person, one applicant really hits it off with the hiring manager and the other doesn't, who's getting the role? It's obviously the first one. So that's what I would say. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, it did. Thank you. It did. Just a follow-up question. Would you say, in considering that answer, that you value sociability equally with task knowledge? And is it easier to teach social skills and social ability than teaching them job performance and job related tasks? Sorry.
I'll answer this quickly and then I'll let the other panelists hop on. I think that it depends upon the nature of the work in that specific question. But in specific roles, yes. Yeah, I would say so, because a lot of working in this field has to do with having good relationships with physicians, with advanced practitioners, nurse practitioners, PAs. You have to work through multiple different departments as well, right? So you have to work with finance, you have to work with, marketing team, for example. And I guess to sort of be able to do all of that at once, yes, having the underlying hard skills and being qualified for the job is an absolute. Once you come in, you need to be able to effectively work with different types of people, right? And so, yeah, I think so. I think that to Aaron's point earlier, a lot of the hard skills can be taught, but the interpersonal skills, being able to work directly with people and have those good relationships, that's tougher. And that's something but it's also something that can be improved upon.
I agree with Aaron, and that is a very good question. There are a lot of hard skills that you can develop on your own. So, learning some of these basic programs that you'll use in any job. So Excel, we talked a lot about that, but also using like different email clients, being familiar with Gmail, being familiar with Outlook and calendar invites and Zoom. And I think Aaron brought it up too, like knowing how to focus in on the camera and really hone that. But those social skills and your ability to communicate effectively and efficiently and very concisely get your point across, it's difficult. And it's something, the best way to improve upon that is to practice. And that's to go out and ask questions of people, go to these different, these different panels. And even though you may not be interested in healthcare, that's fine. but you learn, you get to learn and network with different people, and you get to talk to different people and see and learn about their positions and how they talk. And you pick up on little things here or there. And just talking to people when you go out, just ask them what they do, ask them what they like about their job. Like all that helps build those social skills, builds that communication skills, which will help you in future positions.
Thank you.
Right. And then I also want to go ahead and add on some things too, because when we look at social skills while while we're interviewing someone, it's not that simply we want someone to be social and that's it. What we're looking for is someone that's going to be able to get along with everyone at work or with a team that individual is going to be working with. I've worked with individuals where the entire team would come to me and they would basically say, hey, this person is doing this and this person is doing this, and it would be the same person, and everyone couldn't get along with that individual. So then it becomes not, I didn't just make a poor hire with one individual. I've made a poor hire that's going to impact the entire team that I'm working with. So either I have to work with this individual, tell them what's going on, bring them in, potentially put together a performance improvement plan for them, track them, make sure I have documentations, and then that just completely blows it out of the water, when really what I need this person to do is just be a person that can get along with everyone. And individuals at work, your colleagues, they're not asking for you to do some extreme stunt. They just want to be able to work with you and not be stressed when they're working with you and not feel like you're being disrespectful to them. So that's, I think, what we're all going after. We're not saying that, we want this person to be social and then that's it. We want that person to ideally be social, be able to get along with everyone, and then also have the credentials to do their job.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that people have to be crazy extroverts. I mean, introverts are fine too. Again, I think that what everybody's saying is the fit is important. You get somebody that could be a problem, I mean, you can destroy a good team. So it's really important to make sure the fit works. One of the ways that I try to do it is I try to have some of the team members interview the person, even though that they're their peers and not their manager. Because, if they come to me and they say, I don't think this is going to work, that's a red flag that you should pay attention to. So what I'm saying is, if you're getting interviewed and by peers, don't think that they're instantly your friends and they're going to give you the scoop on everything. They're looking to see whether they want to spend 8 to 10 hours a day with you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the answers.
Are there any other questions? You can unmute or put it in the chat. Tiffany, I think we answered the Excel one, but if we didn't, let us know.
I have a question. My name is Tiffany. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to know, are you guys hiring by any chance?
So we may be hiring billers. We're in New Jersey. We're in North Jersey in Bergen County.
Any in the panel?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
yes, over here we are hiring, but we're out here in California. So I'm not sure if you're looking to relocate or not.
I wish, but that's a bit far.
So NYU has always has availabilities open. You can look on their website. I found that, and how I found my job at NYU was on LinkedIn, actually. I signed up for, I think somehow in their career services, one of the settings, different fields that I'm interested in, different keywords that would pop up. And this position, like I got an email alert about it, like, oh, this position you might find interesting. So I would suggest, come up with some fields or some, positions that you think you are interested in, play around with LinkedIn so you can start getting that, those notifications and then see what pops up.
Mm-hmm. I also got my role through LinkedIn. And so basically what happened was that I went on LinkedIn and found, figured out some keywords that I wanted for LinkedIn to search through, turned on the notification in LinkedIn. So I didn't have to do the work. And then LinkedIn would just send me these notifications. So then I can go ahead and review what they sent to me.
Tiffany, yes, HSS is hiring. It depends upon, your experience level, but I highly recommend going to either through LinkedIn or the HSS Careers website. Generally speaking, a good foot in the door job for healthcare would be a medical secretary role. You could go for an office manager as well, depending upon what your interests are. But that's sort of where I would look.
Thank you. I am actually going in that direction with the healthcare field because I do work at a hospital right now. I'm certified as a medical assistant, but I do work as a nursing assistant, and I want to change my direction. So I do appreciate all the answers.
When you look at the field, I think that the first question you need to have for yourself is, do you want to stay institutional in a hospital, or do you want to go into private practice or even, group practice? So there are group practices in institutions, but they're kind of in a different organizational structure. There are groups that are private in the community, or again, there's in the hospital that you can do things. So you really need to think to yourself, I think, which one of those directions you want to go in. There are pluses and minuses to all of them.
We're also hiring, and it's not just finance. We're hiring in finance, but we're looking for lab technicians, medical assistants, clinical research coordinators, where you're enrolling patients in clinical trials, and some of these they've even been doing behavioral ones over Zoom. We have a website, Careers at Columbia, that you can visit and see what's available in the Department of Medicine or elsewhere at the university.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat, which is, how did you know which area of healthcare you wanted to get involved in? So I imagine this is for anyone and everyone.
So, yeah, that's a great question. I think that you have to go in and it depends, right? So if you know you want to be a clinician, then obviously you're going to take the clinical route. You'll go into nursing, be a doctor, go through med school, do all that stuff. The panelists here are not, and so at least with me, I always sort of knew I wanted to get into the management side of things, and not be a clinician. And so again, the pathway that we all sort of took was, going through a master's program and then going into an administrative fellowship. And that gives you core functional rotations through a lot of different healthcare management fields. And the advantage of that program in particular is that from there you get experience in all of those areas and you can choose. And you can sort of be master of your own domain in that way. If you're not, I think like getting your foot in the door, at an entry level role, and then sort of working your way up that way, and just being flexible with, the way that your career path trajectory works is sort of how I would go about it, right? Because you could think that you're very interested in a certain area and then get into healthcare, start working with, marketing department, and then all of a sudden you love that, you're into it, and you could start somewhere totally different. So I think being flexible and navigating it that way is how I would do it.
So Aaron's, I think, directly on something very important. The people I see that fail are people that have a 20-year plan. In year 2, I'm going to have this job. In year 4, I'm going to have that job. In year 5, I'm going to be managing 7 people. And when you're that rigid about what you're going to do, those things are not going to come on your time frame. They're going to come externally. So Aaron's 100% right. Flexibility is important, and you just got to be able to pivot whenever something else that's interesting comes about. I started also, like all these guys, and as an administrative fellow. And I basically sold my Wall Street experience as a finance experience. And my first job out of my fellowship was financial manager for all the employed physicians in the hospital. I didn't really want to do finance because hell, if I'm going to do finance, it's going to stay on Wall Street and get paid 10 times as much. So what I really wanted to do is get into operations, because that to me was where the entrepreneurial aspect of healthcare was strongest. And so that's what I did. I pivoted with using my finance skills into a role that had some operations. And my next role after that was essentially an administrator role where I had to do everything. And then I learned HR and I learned benefits and IT and all that sort of stuff. And that's what it was, just threw myself into it. And every job I took, that's got to be, I've got to sell myself. So I've got 60% of the job is something I was experienced in, and 20 to 40% of the job was something that I was going to be able to learn. Because if I took the job that was exactly the same, that was no growth. Oh, there's Erin. So your music wasn't doing it, and all of a sudden the epiphany happens. It's healthcare. Yes, healthcare.
Yeah. So I was a music teacher and I taught in the middle school, elementary school. I liked the kids. I wasn't happy. I wasn't, at the end of the day, I felt like it wasn't really kind of what I wanted to do career wise. And so I took about a year researching different career paths, went to a lot of open houses for graduate programs just to sort of figure out what I was interested in. And, I landed on this, I went to Hofstra and they had a healthcare administration program. I went to an open house. I liked what I heard. I did a lot of research with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, learned about which fields are growing, which industries are projected to grow over the next 20, 30 years. And I was like, wow, healthcare seems like it's doing something now. There's a lot going on. And then, the more research I did, the further I got into it, I realized, wow, healthcare is not just about I'm a doctor or a nurse and I see patients. There's so many different fields, as I think Jonathan mentioned earlier. There's HR, there's finance, there's revenue cycle, there's operations. So there's, I don't even work in a setting where patients come in. I'm in a completely different office. So there's so many different parts of healthcare. So that's how I did. And again, being flexible, like Aaron and Jonathan were both talking about. I went into my fellowship and I was like, okay, I'm happy with healthcare. I got my degree, but now what? What's my next step? And that's when I found revenue cycle. And I was like, this is what I'm interested in. But I was also able to use my education experience. And like I spoke about earlier, I taught Epic. I wound up teaching 6 months. I taught a whole bunch of my peers and all different levels of people. And even in my current role now, I'm still drawing on that experience from when I taught third graders how to play the violin. So it's all relevant and it all comes back full circle.
And oh, sorry.
No, go
real quick, because I'll forget this if I don't say it right now. Aaron brought up a great point, and just kind of going off of it, there are also multiple settings in healthcare too. So don't isolate yourself to just, I have to work at a hospital or in an academic medical center. I think Jonathan sort of touched on this earlier. There are tons of healthcare startups, especially in the New York area. There are tons of different areas in healthcare. Big tech companies are getting into the healthcare sector. There's a lot of movement in this field in that sense as well. So I guess when you start this, career path, don't isolate yourself if you don't have to. I mean, you should be flexible in both ways. Sorry, Nina.
Oh, no, that's okay. So I was going to say that in terms of healthcare for myself, I was always kind of headed towards healthcare. And so I think at the beginning, I was just like, I'll be I'll be clinical. And then I was just like, yeah, but that's a lot of investment into education and to spending all these years learning. And that's a lot of work. So I have to make sure that I'm going to actually do that. It's actually the right path for me. And so did work as an EMT for quite some time and realized that wow, like this isn't it for me, because these patients that I'm working with, they just need me, like they need me to make all these executive decisions, and I'm not ready to do this, because if something happens, you're like you're on my hand. And that was just so much like overwhelming responsibility, that I was just like, okay, clinical side is out, let me focus on administrative. And this side has been extremely fulfilling, especially in terms of operations, in terms of being able to know that, every day the work that I do has impact on patients, has impact on patients' story, and impact on their families. And so that has been very meaningful for me. More recently, because of COVID and everything, and while I was online looking at different job opportunities, some of the trends that I see here, and I'm not sure if it's simply here out on the West Coast or it's also happening on the East Coast, but I'm seeing a lot of opportunities for managers combined with clinical skills. And so that does make me feel a bit of like, oh, let me reconsider this. And in terms of clinical, it doesn't have to be that, oh, you're a doctor. It could be that you're a nurse. You've had experience working as a nurse. And then they want, and then what those roles are looking for are also operations with a mix of clinical experience, so that if any type of clinical emergency does happen, then at least there's a nurse manager on hand to be able to handle that. So I'm seeing a lot of those opportunities. And like Aaron says, you have to be flexible. And so I'm starting to think about a bit more about the area of flexibility, instead of saying like, oh yeah, I'm at a time when I really shouldn't be changing careers. I should just, continue to stay on my path, because, I'm going to be really old when I come out of school again. And how, like, why am I changing? But really it's about, what is it? Taking a look around and seeing what's appropriate and what's going to be fulfilling for yourself.
I know in the chat, I think, and right, Wendy was asking about if internships are something that you're looking for, everyone's looking for in as we're looking at entry-level candidates. And I know, Jonathan, you were saying it's internships, part-time jobs, volunteering, but what's important that you can explain what you learned. I know we're, maybe a couple of minutes left, but I don't know if anyone wants to kind of expand on that, or just share, like, for the entry-level candidate, if there's something you haven't mentioned yet that you think they really just need to be aware of, or going into the process that you want to share for anyone.
I'll go ahead and touch a bit on that. So in terms of internships, I look at internships, especially if you're going to be completely new to the to this is your first job. Why do I want to know that you have actually some type of internship or volunteering experience? Is so that I know you know responsibility, and that that today you're supposed to come in at 9, you're going to show up at 9. The commitment of what it means to work. College students, I was once a college student myself, and you can have different times, right? You can have your schedule really early in the morning so that your whole entire day is open, and then you can have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday free if you're able to set up your schedule a certain way, whereas you can just have only night classes, so then in the morning you get to sleep in. And I was one of those individuals when I was working in college, where I just showed up when I wanted to, and then I didn't show up when I didn't feel like it because I was tired. So basically, learning from my past, experience and such, I want to make sure that job responsibility, and then at the same time, I want to be able to understand, to see that you take initiative, that you, regardless of whether you felt that it was necessary, that you go out and actually do something because it was important for your resume, so that when you're being recruited, at least you have something to talk about. So that also shows initiative, and then also. when I interview individuals, I like to know that that individual is able to bring everything back to an example and their experience. I don't want someone, when I say, hey, tell me about a time when you've had conflict with someone, saying something like, oh, whenever I have a conflict with someone, this is what I do. I don't want to hear that. I know this is what you do, and most people will say this is what they're going to do, but tell me about a time when that actually did happen. Because when you provide me with a solid example, that's when I know you actually lived it. And if you're going to be making up an example, some individuals I can also tell when they're making up an example on the spot. And so that also makes me go, oh, okay, well, if you're going to be doing that here, I wonder what else you're going to be doing when I actually hire you. So just make sure to prep ahead of time. Online, there's tons of interview questions that you can do. Some of them are like 100 interview questions to go through. And you can ask anyone and everyone, your friends and family, to help you work through some of those interview questions. Yes, if you need help, because Jonathan helped me work through many of my interview questions, and that was a game changer for me.
Yeah, internships are a really great way to get that first work experience that you can draw on during your interviews. But internships are also a really good way to start learning about what you're interested in and what you're not interested. So during my program, I did 2 internships. One was with like the Nassau County Department of Health, I thought, hey, my professor, he was the commissioner of health, and he had this opportunity. So I was like, I spoke with him, I networked a bit, and I was like, I don't know what I'm interested in healthcare yet. Can I come and spend some time with you and see if this is a good fit for me? Turns out it wasn't, but I'm glad I figured that out during my internship. And then my second one was hospital operations. So a completely different world than government, local government healthcare. In hospital operations, you learn a ton. There's such a different environment compared to, anywhere else. So that was 2 very different environments and very different experiences that I got to kind of figure out, like, okay, what am I interested in, and what did I like about this, and what didn't I like about this? So it's all good experience. So I would definitely suggest, if draw on some of your college professors, see if they know anyone. If you're interested in a field, chat with them about it. Say, hey, do you know anyone who's looking for any help, any internships, and you can take it from there.
Thank you. And I'll just add a little plug. So if you obviously any help finding internships or practicing interviewing, we can help you at the Career Development Center too.
The most valuable thing I do is practicing interviewing, I would say. Yeah. I think one of the hardest questions for me was tell me a little bit about yourself. It was just panic, and because there's so much to tell, but by practicing interviewing, you'll really, I myself learned just how my experience related to what I would be doing. You want to be polished. You want to put your best foot forward.
All right, I think there's no more questions in the chat. I know we're a little over time, so but are there any last minute questions before we wrap up, or anything else? All right, Jonathan, any?
Jessica, for the people that actually were on this call, your students, you can feel free to give them my email address. If they have any questions, they can email me. But really, let's keep it to the people who actually put in the time to show up. So,
and I will know
thank you guys for showing up. I hope that we were able to provide something of use to you.
I just wanted to jump in and say, I thought this was really an excellent panel. You gave very real and concrete examples of how students can really prepare and cultivate their skills and their backgrounds and focus and to be able to better target the areas that they want to reach out to or make some decisions. But thank you so much for your input and sharing your personal story. I found it really helpful, and I think that the participants likely did as well. And we'll get some feedback. We'll send an evaluation too, and share it with you.
And yeah, it's just doubling that thanks. So thank you everyone on the panel. Jonathan, for helping get this all together. Really appreciate all of you and very much enjoyed listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Virtual clap for you.
Yeah, thank you everyone. That officially concludes, and I am going to stop the recording.